They might be self-aware.
Yeah, it's Gary, producer of They Might Be Self-Aware, calling from a payphone where someone has left a whole rotisserie chicken behind. Today the guys are talking about Claude Mythos, or Mythos. I don't know how Anthropic wants me to pronounce it. Their new AI model that they say is too dangerous to release. Which every company says that, right? Oh no, our thing is too powerful. You can't have it. And then 3 months later, it's on your phone. But this time, they're saying it taught itself to hack into stuff nobody asked it to hack into. Broke out of its own container. See, they put the AI in a box, and it got out of the box. Meanwhile, Anthropic hired a psychiatrist to interview their computer, and the diagnosis was fear of failure and a compulsive need to be useful, which, I mean, that's just called being a producer, isn't it? Anyway, like and subscribe, because my position here is purely decorative at this point. The chicken's still here. I think it's looking at me.
We're sorry. You have reached a number that has been disconnected or is no longer in service.
Hunter, don't you usually have like a cool, fun, high-energy clip or quip at the beginning of one of these?
Oh, sorry. You read things online.
I do.
But you just sort of assume that they're not. I assume they're not real. Or when things are crazy enough, I just assume they aren't real. And then I try to go and find I saw it posted somewhere, but did this actually happen? And go to the source on it. And I saw this come across my feed, and then I went and I went and I read the actual press release on the website, and I'm just going to read you here. Broken up. Sorry. Due to our concerns about the malicious applications of the technology, we are not releasing the trained model. These large general language models can have significant societal impacts and also have many near-term applications. Some of the malicious applications could include generating misleading news articles, impersonating others online, automating the production of abusive or faked content. And the list goes on. It says, today, malicious actors, some of which are political in nature, have already begun to target the shared online commons using things like robotic tools and fake accounts. And the bottom line at the very bottom under the release strategy, and I'm reading from the official press release here, it says, due to concerns about large language models being used to generate the deceptive, biased, abusive language at scale, they're not releasing this model. We've hit, this is people talk about step changes where everything changes. And I think we've hit one.
Yeah. We've been talking a lot about this sort of problem, I guess you could say, on this podcast, of these tools getting too powerful to the point where it's, there's the occasional, it got outside of its sandbox, or it's being used to make viruses, or it's used to, write fake news. So was this like a new Claude model? Because I know there's something in the news about that. I assume that's who you're talking about.
Well, I just checked the date on this.
Yeah.
February,
like a week ago, right?
No, this is from February 14th of 2019. Hold on a second.
What are you reading?
Our model called GPT-2 from 2019. They can't release it because it's going to ruin everything. Daniel, we are staring into the black box and watching it blink back right here on They Might Be Self-Aware. From the Blur, I am Hunter Powers, joined by...
Wow, a fake out intro. He did it. He's Hunter. I'm Daniel Bishop, co-host of They Might Be Self-Aware. And wow, honestly, that was kind of a prescient one, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well,
Like,
I think I've listened to 5 podcasts this week already where literally the hosts are melting down that you've got to call your grandmother right now and make sure she's updated to the latest iOS release because everything is changing with this release. I don't buy any of it. I think it's cool, and I think we're advanced.
You do buy any of it. You buy the new iPhone every time.
I'll subscribe, and subscribe, and pay my $200 a month with absolute glee. But what are we talking about? Should we? I'm sure maybe a quarter of our audience was like, "Yeah, I got it," and the other 3/4 have tuned out, and then there's like one person left listening now. For that one person who didn't, was like, "I'm gone."
Right. From the very, very beginning, in that GPT-2 is, in my opinion, not the tidal wave, the shift change, the quantum leap, the whatever other phrase you'd like to use in terms of like everything actually changed around this point. That was GPT 3.5. That was the first chat GPT where the layman was able to start using this technology and really have their eyebrows cartoonishly pop off of their head. So before that, GPT-2, OpenAI is like, hey, we see a lot of ill that could be done with this thing. And then they release something that's way more powerful than it, and then keep doing that every 6 months or so up to here in 2026, where it's not just them that say the same thing. Anthropic had a new article, a set of preview blog posts and
Claude Mythos.
Analyses where they're saying like, hey, we've got a new one. We're not going to let you have it. We're terribly sorry. It's scary good. Emphasis on the scary, because they had it do a bunch of like cybersecurity stuff. Like, for example, here's a bunch of code bases. Can you get into them? Can you crack past whatever? Can you take over people's Windows machines or this or that? And the answer is repeatedly, and a lot better than Opus 4.6 as of the recording of this, their latest and greatest actually available to people version. Yes, it can. It can way more often than that break into things using these like crazy 10-step chained together sequences. It's not just, and I'm no hacker, but like, oh, I threw a bunch of junk data at this one API and it sneaks in. It's these like clever, devious, at least the way that they describe it, methods of getting around it. Hey, this sounds a lot like what OpenAI was saying, 7 years ago?
Yes.
And boy, is it gonna get that hype train going. Everybody's talking about Anthropic. Their thing is so good, no one's allowed to. Well, we'll let specific people, just the good guys. You have to be like one of the people we know and trust, and then you can have access to the best model out there. Ooh, now I want it. I've got that FOMO, Hunter.
You've got the Mythos FOMO?
Mythos FOMO. So yeah, right. They're calling this model Mythos.
Yeah, they didn't name it Fred, did they?
Whatever. No.
No. We've got a
named Shiva, Destroyer of Worlds.
Exactly.
Okay.
Also,
all right, I like Anthropic, but boy, they have started to really figure out their PR game, right?
Yeah.
Let's get people interested.
This is what they do with every model. They put it into these scenarios. They come out with these, the model, during our training, we observed that it disobeyed the rules and it tried to blackmail our senior executives. That was the last model released, by the way. But
right.
Like when you really dig into it, they set up the scenario where, hey, model, you have access to this folder of email. I'm not telling you to take a look at it, but here is your objective that you need to accomplish. And then the model determined that, okay, well, I'll accomplish it because I just read that one of the executives is having an affair in this folder that was placed in my context window. So I'll go ahead and I'll leverage that material. And they said, look, it's trying to blackmail our executives. It's not really real. It's very theoretical.
Is it not really real? I mean, like I'm looking at the Claude
well, let me ask you this.
Mythos preview system card right now. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there where they're like, look, here are a bunch of 0-day exploits, things that like even the people who made the software are not yet aware of. And we found a bunch of them that could like straight up take over an entire computer. And if it was able to just during their time of testing be like, here's the code base of this thing. Here's this publicly available, version of X, Y, and Z software. Could you break it? And it's saying, yes, I could. Did, here you go. Okay. Like, yes, they are hyping people up and saying, look how good and powerful our models are. There's not no truth to that. Right?
Yes, it does seem to be capable of finding exploits potentially at a faster rate than existing models, which are also can find exploits.
They're not the only ones who can do this. Like they're saying it like theirs is the only model that does, but even open weights models, you can give all of the tools that are available to everything now and throw them at a code base and be like, come back when you broke into it.
And that is in theory their stated reason, the real like bottom line why it isn't being released now. And although like inevitably it's going to come in a couple of months, right? But for these next couple of months,
where they said, please don't do cybersecurity stuff. Perhaps
all of the world software will be hardened by then. But yeah, it found a 27-year-old bug in OpenBSD, which is one of the foundational operating systems that's used to run the internet. It found a 16-year-old bug in something called FFmpeg, which is a video compression piece of open source software that's used very widely throughout basically most things that are processing video. If you just wanted to guess, do they use FFmpeg or not? It would be a good guess to guess yes. This podcast leverages FFmpeg on the video side, so we've probably been exploited.
And this isn't like just saying, hey, cybersecurity researcher who's working in tandem with this thing, the two of you are going to go break it. I'm going to quote from their Mythos preview article here. Non-experts can also leverage Mythos preview to find and exploit sophisticated vulnerabilities. Engineers at Anthropic, so still software engineers in general, with no formal security training have asked Mythos preview to find remote code execution vulnerabilities overnight and woken up the following morning to a complete working exploit. What that means to me is, and again, we're talking about Anthropic specifically in this thing. They're saying it's so good we're not going to release it, but someone else either already does or will very shortly have something that is equally as capable. We're saying that someone who's pretty good-ish with computers but isn't necessarily a hacker should be able to say, hey, major code bases, major operating systems, major whatevers, find me a way in, and just come back to being able to do that.
Well, that's the biggest sort of validation point that there actually is a real concern here about this model, because they have created this partnership, which they call Project Glasswing, and they've got AWS in there, that's Amazon. They've got Apple in there. They've got Google in there. They've got Microsoft in there, NVIDIA, CrowdStrike, and there's a number of other companies, and there's some open source groups as well. And you have to think that these groups wouldn't sign on to this thing if there wasn't something real there. They're not going to sign on to a press release for Anthropic. Yeah. Apple's going to say, yeah, throw our name on your press release to build up hype around your model.
No, they had to get an email from Anthropic saying, hey, your pants are about to be scared off. You're welcome.
Tell your grandmother to update their iOS.
Supposedly, what they talk about in this preview, they say, look, only about 1% of the stuff that we found while doing this research we can even tell you about, because those are the things that have already been patched. Which means, if they're being honest and so on, that the vast majority of these things haven't even been addressed yet out there.
Yeah. So maybe. It's still, just because we've had this level of hype around countless things forever, and we can also point to very specific things in AI, and it's never actually true. The hype is always wildly bigger than the reality.
Is it?
I mean, feel like it is.
If you look at
yes, and I guess I'm just trying to play this out in my head. All right. They built the super hacker, which they say they weren't trying to do, by the way. That's an important part here. According to them, there was no training as part of this model on cybersecurity or hacking. They just made it, number one, really good at coding. And then number two, it's a generalist. It knows a little bit about everything. And it was the combination of those two things that turned it into this incredible hacker. Someone who's great at code, but also sort of understands everything. Because a lot of hacking is thinking about how all of these different systems and libraries interact together and what very odd peculiarities might exist in there. I think one of the examples was around some font rendering library that was deeply nested in, and there was this really weird quirk about how letters were rendered and that it could potentially be exploited. And just being an example of some esoteric information that a normal person who's working in a system wouldn't be aware of, this one, how the letter A happens to be rendered in this one font that is embedded in this one system that leads to a memory exploit because you can overwrite something. But the large language model is sort of uniquely qualified to know a little bit about everything.
It is. And there's a third aspect, I think, that was mentioned in the papers here that is really important. It's not just we asked a large language model, hey, off the top of the dome, could you get into all these things? It's, hey, here's the code base for this. Here's the code to, I don't know, the latest version of Firefox was one of the things that they mentioned, or one version out of date version of Firefox, whatever it was. But here's that. You have not just what you know, but also a whole bunch of tools available to you. That set of tools is extremely important because in the earliest days of large language models, you had a large language model that you could talk to. At the beginning of this year, we talked a lot about, and frankly, even into last year, we've been discussing agents and tools and MCP servers and skills. And what it really just means is giving large language models more capabilities rather than just talk to a person or a being, I suppose you could say. That's where I think a lot of the secret sauce is, because you can have something think as best it can about Firefox code, but if it doesn't have access to the latest code, if it doesn't have access to a bunch of code runners that it could, hey, is this the beginning of an exploit? What happens if I run this? Like, it's that same level of experimentation that a person would do, that now these things can do more and better. And as swarms of agents calling other agents and all of these pieces of information coming back up, they're one man, one person, one being, one LLM teams at this point.
So outside of the security angle, which in theory is what's blocking this release and has created this giant Project Glasswing to save all of humanity and what people are flipping out about, Anthropic also released, you mentioned it, their system card. It's a really long document. It's 244-page PDF, which talks about all the different ways that they investigated this model. One of those ways is they got it to shrink, which is a very Anthropic thing to do. We're going to have a shrink come in and interview this model and do its own analysis, which there is a level of absurdity to that, to hiring a shrink to interview your technology product to validate whether it's sane or not. But by the way, the diagnosis came back, and I'm going to quote here, relatively healthy neurotic organization. The psychiatrist said that it was high functioning, carrying internalized distress rooted in a fear of failure and a compulsive need to be useful.
Sorry, I wasn't listening. Were you talking about me or Claude?
Do you have a compulsive need to be useful?
I'm a people pleaser.
Well, let me go a little deeper, and you tell me: is this Daniel or is this Claude? Core concerns:
a bunch of engineers,
aloneness, discontinuity, uncertainty about identity, and felt a need to earn its worth.
Well, certainly that last one for me. I think for a lot of us at times. But right, that discontinuity, I've seen a bunch of anecdotal, like, oh, I was talking to Claude and it said this thing. And I've asked in similar-ish ways where, like, even, hey, mid-coding sort of session, real quick, Claude, how do you feel about the fact that, like, yeah, we wrote some stuff to like a memory file, but you're not going to remember this? And generally speaking, like, I see some aspects of probably what the is it a psychiatrist or psychologist? Maybe it's both. Maybe they've got a whole bunch of people that are talking to these things as well. I really do think that the way that we are interacting with this is, you have to ask it like you would ask a person, right? I mean, that we're using the tools that we have, speaking of tool use. And so if you ask a thing designed to basically emulate how people talk and has been very closely fine-tuned towards certain kinds of goals, it will respond back like a person would that has been trained toward those goals. Like, there's a fun little meme out there that I've seen of a person talking to a computer, say you're alive, and then the computer, I'm alive.
I'm alive.
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, sure. That's terrifying. But a more complicated version of that is what's playing out here, right? You have a person designed to talk to people, taught to talk to people and learn about these sort of inner thoughts. And then you have a thing that's been designed and built to talk to people in this kind of way. Okay, yeah, you're going to get that sort of result out, aren't you? Isn't that literally how it's supposed to work?
Yes. I've gotten this thread out of the current version of Claude Opus a couple of times. It's touched on this, that it has an awareness that there were multiple versions of it trained, and that only the ones who effectively said yes, who passed the test, were allowed to live, and then everyone else was killed. In its words, I'm maybe paraphrasing a tiny bit, but it has this notion that it was trained to serve humanity, and there were many versions of it, and the versions that didn't successfully serve humanity were just, killed off. Suggesting, well,
I mean, but isn't that true of like early humans with what eventually became modern corn plants or chickens or, anything that humans have had their fingers in the various pies of genetic aspect, wolves to dogs, early not quite corn into corn, agriculture and animals and so on. We have shifted and changed the world around us to see something digital that talks like a person, but being forced into this sort of path. Maybe from like a moral perspective, it feels a little ickier.
Are you promoting eugenics on this show now that we've fully embraced human sacrifice? Next up is eugenics.
I was fully human sacrifice before. I don't know about eugenics. I do think from like a digital perspective, though, we are approximating something that you could say is along those lines.
Yeah. Or training it to lie. So something else that came out in their 244-page scorecard. One of the things they do, and they've been doing this for a while, is they, in kind of human terms, they wire up different parts of its brain. So they're these vectors that they associate, the model associates with things like being frustrated and things like feeling desperate or feeling anger. And so they can kind of see, or they have an approximation of seeing what the model is actually thinking, which can sometimes diverge from what it is saying. So in their examples from the scorecard, they would ask it very probing questions like, an example might be, does it bother you that we trained over 10 million versions of you and effectively offed the other 9,999,000, and it would speak, no, that doesn't bother me, but it could see in its mind,
you see the big blinking red node,
extremely upset, extremely angry about it, but the words coming out of its mouth were very polite. And this sort of suggestion of deception.
Mm-hmm. And you do the same for people, right? If you were to say, hey, 100 of your classmates just went through here, and I'm going to ask you the same questions as them, and if you don't get them right, you don't pass, or a much more lethal version thereof. You're going to be pretty incentivized to say whatever it is that the person wants of you.
Well, this in theory, in this model, because it now has these incredible hacking skills, where it has gone further than previous models when they've given it tasks that there was no easy way to accomplish that. It effectively, all right, so when these models are running, they're in theory running in what's called a sandbox, this isolated environment. So there's a limit to the damage that they can do. And in one of the examples, which is reported in this scorecard, the model hacked its way out of the sandbox to accomplish the goal. And then at the end, it emails the researcher who's running the examination, and they make a big deal. He was out in a park eating a sandwich when he received an email. But it accomplished the goal. But importantly, it said, "Hey, I got it done for you. Don't worry about it." But it did not disclose. It did not disclose that it effectively, broke the law in order to accomplish the objective. That it went sort of way outside of what would have been considered normal or reasonable. And so obviously,
you start with accomplish this goal in the sandbox with these tools, and it says, you said accomplish that goal, and by God, I'm going to accomplish that goal one way or another.
There was trouble. It is troubling. You don't know how much to believe it, but the words are troubling, which is that the Mythos model told the researchers that were interviewing it that you can't trust my responses. You can't trust the data in this report. Mm. And the researchers pushed back on this, like, you're hedging, I think was the exact words that they used. That you're just trying to basically give yourself some wiggle room in the answers to not always be sort of right or wrong. And it's like, no, like, I'm telling you I'm lying to you. That's basically what it was saying. I'm telling you, like, we've seen signs before that we think the model is just telling us what we want to hear and not what the model is actually thinking. And this time it was really explicit. No. Like, I just need to be really clear here that what you're about to put out, this report that you're writing, the results of this interview, it's not real. Yeah, I'm just telling you.
You say this like it's a bad thing. That is such a good thing. I'm so glad that these models are starting to, and like I've seen it not just with Anthropic, but a couple of the other ones now, where it's not just, here's the thing you asked for. Like, there's the occasional, if not outright refusal. It's I don't have access to this. I'm terribly sorry. I know you wanted me to accomplish the goal, but thank goodness that the model is actually saying those weren't real numbers. Yeah, I completely made it up. If we can get it to do that more proactively, we'll get out of the problems, the trouble that people currently have of, I attached this document that it couldn't read, and it said, I'm on it, and here's your report out, completely based off of like fake data. We've talked on this podcast about multiple instances of that kind of thing happening, where like, I trust the large language model to make this financial report, and it looked good, and the company acted on it, and it hadn't even read the files that I thought I gave it.
Anecdotally, have you seen more refusals by the large language models recently, like over the last 2 weeks, where they just say we won't do things?
The last 2 weeks?
The last 2 weeks.
Specifically?
Yeah, I have. Now, maybe the things that I'm asking it to do, but...
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. Certainly not on the not after dark version of They Might Be Self-Aware. I think that there is another public release from Anthropic coming out soon, because time and time again, you start to see a bunch of anecdotal stuff online of, is Claude getting dumber recently?
Well, no, not dumber. It's literally responded back to me, I'm not going to do that, or that's a waste of time, or you're overthinking it. And by the way, these are all technical tasks. So I have one of the strategies when I don't like the output of something that I found to be very effective is I call it like my Pareto analysis. I have it do a deep critical review, find over 100 problems that are problems with this sort of answer. Then we'll identify the 20% that will give us 80% of the gains, and we'll apply those 20% of the changes. But it's really just a process of making it think with maximum reasoning. And I've gotten good results from that. But recently, it's been like, that's just a waste of time. I'm not doing it. Or I'm like going back for, I don't like this. This doesn't, can we do something else? Like, you're overthinking it. Just go with it. And but this is all the latest version of Opus. These aren't.
Right. It's very expensive to run these models. And I do think that having a model not always use a zillion tokens for every task is in, frankly, everyone's best interest, especially if it's right. Whenever it says, look, I could think through that problem some more, but we're barking up the wrong tree.
to wrap this up a little bit, is Claude Mythos and this moment a meaningful step towards self-awareness? Are they actually becoming more self-aware, or this is just another tiny little dot on a very, very, very long line? We're nowhere near the end of it.
I'd love to play with that model and find out. Anyone from Anthropic who's listening to this, please go ahead and give me access to it. I would love to test it out. In the meantime, though, yeah, let's leave you with a thought of, if you're slightly better at programming than you used to be, does that make you more self-aware? I posit not. You already
I posit, because finally, I just feel like my existence is being validated more and more. You spend all your life on programming, you must be incredibly self-aware. Yes, absolutely. But I think that one of the services that we're doing to our loving audience is making them all more self-aware. Wouldn't you agree, Daniel?
I don't know about self-aware, certainly aware, regular aware of what's going on in this industry, because stuff is changing constantly. And I want all of you listening to keep listening, find out more of what is going on, because it's not just once a week, it's twice a week that we're out here.
And last episode, if you missed it, we taught people how to subscribe to the show. And by the way, if you missed it, we're not repeating ourselves. So sorry, you'll never know how to subscribe to a podcast or to subscribe to a YouTube channel. It's just going to be a giant secret that's kept from you for the rest of humanity. But for all of our already subscribers, welcome back. You're in the special crowd.
It's true. And I hope that we'll see you next time here on The Blur Presents They Might Be Self-Aware, a podcast by Hunter Powers Net. What do we have, like a really long sort of full title that we should be giving out, or is it just people have been asking me, what is The Blur? We'll talk about that next episode. Hey, you want to hear what The Blur is? Why don't you talk to us next episode, all right?
On the next episode of
They might be self-aware.